From the early 2000s to the end of the 2010s, the MCU was thriving. It started with the success of Iron Man and Captain America. The first Avengers movie was like an historical event. Others tried to replicate what Marvel did, all with their intertwining plot lines going hand in hand directly with new movies coming out every few months. And it wasn't just some low-tier garbage, it was actually really good. I remember the craze of going to see all these movies building up towards each other. They had quite the variance in their films, like Ant-Man was somewhat of a heist movie, Guardians of the Galaxy was sci-fi, Doctor Strange was fantasy, and Spider-Man was coming of age. And then they put together the different superheroes they built up into their epic Avengers movies. They were doing so good with it that it drew in regular audiences and not just comic book nerds. And finally, Infinity War dropped, bringing it all together, the final boss of superhero movies. This was one of the best movies to ever release. Endgame came out and provided the conclusion we all waited so long for, the grand ending to it all. And it was so well done and perfect. The Warner Bros. DCEU struggled to replicate what Marvel was creating and rushed their arcs to pump out their own collaborations. And despite taking years to push them out, they always fell short. However, Marvel now struggles the same fate. Ever since the Infinity Saga's grand conclusion, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has gone downhill. In fact, that's an understatement, it's plummeted. Now, just like DC, Marvel's also pumping out low-tier garbage. But how did it fall so hard from its former glory? Whereas DC was doomed from the start in almost every aspect, Marvel's downfall is very complex. There are a lot of factors contributing to the downfall of Marvel, which is why I think its downfall is worth being studied. The idea of crossing through different dimensions and parallel universes is becoming very prominent in the superhero genre. And not just the superhero genre, actually, now that I think of it, it's kind of in every genre. There are still some new superhero movies that don't do this, like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which was a great film. But unlike the Spider-Verse, the multiverse in the mainline MCU is starting to feel contrived and forced. It seems like a device to keep the plot rolling forward, an excuse to keep dragging on the same characters for the next generation of box office dollars. Hollywood is trying to make this the fad so they can get away with lazy storytelling. A good example is The Flash. Barry Allen runs fast enough to travel back in time to Michael Keaton's Batman, even though that literally makes no sense. They explain it by putting spaghetti on the table and saying, "This is time travel." They cram in Supergirl, there's no villains to be fought, just a lesson to not be learned at the very end. They shoehorn in some cameos for your money and call it good. This summarizes exactly what Marvel has also been trying to do in recent times. Let's be honest, Spider-Man No Way Home, as good as it was, had a contrived plot. They used Doctor Strange as a scapegoat for nonsense in order to pull these three actors into the same room so that you'll give them your money to see it. People don't like the multiverse because it allows for anything to happen. The writers can get lazy as they want and death will mean nothing because everyone and anything can come back through the multiverse. You want to see Garfield and Maguire in the same room? The multiverse. You want to see the Fantastic Four but only one of them in your upcoming Doctor Strange movie? The multiverse. I need to get out of 16 different speeding tickets, but it's all good because I can just multiverse my way out of them all. Unless there are alternate Ramithors that also have 16 speeding tickets. Anyway, with the multiverse, anything can be reversed and duplicated. It would be different if the multiverse has some complex thing to travel through and navigate, but it seems to work conveniently for the studios to cram in assets for monetary gain. Marvel instantly tried to replicate what they had with Thanos with a new villain, Kang the Conqueror. But instead of letting him build up slowly, they used him as the main villain of Quantumania, where he is basically defeated by an army of ants. With Jonathan Majors fired from the project over controversies, the build-up for Kang was all for nothing anyway, and they'll probably have nowhere to go from it. Besides Kang, Marvel hasn't left themselves with many villains to work with. Ultron in the comics plays a big role, same with Ego and MODOK, but they served as temporary villains. Red Skull should have also lasted longer. So because these huge main villains were used in such small-scale adventures, they don't have as much opportunity for grand-scale villains. Though they do have Galactus Null in the High Evolutionary. We never saw a corpse for the High Evolutionary, so they still have the opportunity to beef him up. Let's hope that they utilize their new villains now, because so far they haven't been doing so great. After the decades coming together building up to Infinity War, everything else will naturally feel underwhelming. You had a fantastic cold villain with a decent point, the power balance was well done, it was funny, dramatic, action-packed, and it left you needing more. That's as high as the stakes could get, so there is bound to be some amount of fatigue. And while that isn't directly the fault of the MCU, it could definitely be a factor in the MCU's downfall. They're going from universal stakes with characters and stories being built up for decades back to smaller stuff. It's like trying to eat store-bought tamales after having homemade ones. And they're moving forward without the main two characters. With Iron Man and Captain America dead, they're having a hard time moving forward. Most of the characters in the stories in the MCU were tied together by these two. Without them, it's difficult to bring everyone back. And when they do, it feels forced and weird, like Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. Another thing stunting Marvel is the lack of Marvel properties. Luckily, this is about to change. When the comic books started dying, Marvel sold their properties to any studio who'd pay them big money for them. Fox bought Deadpool, X-Men, the Fantastic Four. Sony bought Spider-Man and the rest of that. For those of you who haven't read the comics, those might seem unimportant. However, those properties have so much importance in Marvel lore that not featuring them in the MCU has probably stifled some of the stories and arcs that were supposed to happen. The movies feel aimless right now, like they aren't really trying to build to anything, and people will wonder why they can't just keep adapting from the comics. There are lots of good stories from the comics that happened after Infinity War. However, these missing pieces have killed a lot of ambition to adapt those good stories. There has been rumors that after Avengers Secret Wars, they might soft reboot the MCU, and if they do that, it would be a good time to bring in properties like the X-Men and Spider-Man from the start in the MCU. If not so, it doesn't matter, because luckily, this is changing with Deadpool 3 and the new Fantastic Four movies being built. Perhaps Marvel will be able to make good use of these properties going forward if Deadpool and Wolverine is as good as it looks to be. So yeah, that's the downfall of the MCU. I would like to give a huge thanks to Tom's Lore for helping me out with this video. If there's anything you want to say about this video, leave a comment down below, or maybe comment other things I should talk about. Anyways, peace out.
Also, can you like and subscribe for me, please? Oh, that'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.